Good afternoon, South Africa. Welcome to Afternoon Express. My name is Danilo Acquisto.
Yeah, welcome to The Loft. I'm Bonnie Mbuli. Welcome to another inspirational Tuesday here in The Loft. Today, we're discussing a very topical issue.
Indeed. As you know, recently on Afternoon Express, we had the discussion around fees must fall. We chatted to two representatives. And as you know, it's been going on for about a month now, and it's time for us to discuss this on much greater detail. Today in The Loft, we're going to be discussing hashtag fees must fall, as well as we're going to be discussing the outsourcing issue that's also been brought to light of late. We want to know what this means for our country. We want to know whether this means that the students have got a win. Does government have a win? What is the plan for the future, and what are we as South Africans going to do about it?
We speak to a reporter from the Daily Vox who are watching the whole journey quite closely, and they're going to just chat to us regarding the whole protest and what the results are so far.
Indeed. So in order to have this kind of conversation, we need to have both points of view. Joining us in the loft today, we've also got the brand new president of the SRC from Witwatersrand. She joins us in the building, as well as Dianne, a representative from the Department of Higher Education, also joins us live in the loft today to chat more about these issues together. Yeah,
we also chat to an academic economist who gives us a broad overview of what's happened and where we are and what is the future of South Africa's tertiary institutions economically.
Yes, today is going to be a huge learning curve, I think, for all of us South Africans, so make sure you stay tuned. Joining us in the loft today is the beautiful Jeannie D.
Guys. So I'm in the kitchen today with the fantastic Amber from Woolies, and we're making a good, firm favourite, chicken wings.
Chicken wings.
How are these ones different, though?
Maple and mustard. So you would have noticed that the Flavour Society, maple is actually trending at the moment. So we've got some nice maple on there that goes like sticky and crunchy.
Oh, lovely. I'm salivating already. Remember, you can join in the conversation today online. All you need to do is visit our Facebook page, Afternoon Express. Tweet us at Afternoon Chat using the official hashtag Afternoon Express. So we're also going to be making a delicious dessert in the kitchen a little bit later called demerara. I've never even heard of this, and I like to think that I'm like the queen of dessert. But they're like meringues or something. But first, we're on the couch with our very first guest.
Indeed, sounds delicious. Now, hashtag fees must fall is a student-led protest movement that began in mid-October 2015 in response to an increase in fees at South African universities. The protests also called for higher wages for low-earning university staff who worked for private contractors such as cleaning services and campus security, and for them to be employed directly by universities. Protests started at the University of the Witwatersrand and spread to the University of Cape Town and Rhodes University before rapidly spreading to other universities across the country. Joining us on the couch to give an overview of everything that went down is senior reporter at the Daily Vox, Raeesa Pather. Very cool to have you join us in the loft today, Raeesa.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's such an honor. So, Raeesa, we need to have a quick discussion around getting a broad overview. You play what is called the middleman in this entire discussion. You know what went down, who believed what, and how it happened. Yes. Why did this whole process of fees must fall start?
It's been building up for a long time. At universities like Forte and TUT, students have been protesting for the stop to increase fees, right? So at the University of Wits around 2-3 weeks ago, students took over the campus, they shut it down, and they forced their vice chancellor to have a conversation about, no increases for 2016. They also demanded an end to outsourcing and that, that there must be free education. It then spread throughout the country, and now we are where we are today, where there's 0% increase for 2016, and students are still going.
Yeah, and so much has been going on in that process, and a lot of South Africans, particularly I think the middle class who are not involved from the education sector, might feel a bit disconnected from what's going on the ground. Give us a quick catch-up of what happened then, because it started at the universities, and we have the example of the Western Cape where it then moved to Parliament.
Yes. So when it moved to Parliament, students wanted to engage with Lady Nzimande, right? They wanted to engage with the finance minister about what could be done. When Nzimande tried to talk to them initially, they booed him because police had started firing stun grenades, students were injured, students were arrested, they were very upset. It's now moved to a point where after the 0% increase announcement, they went back to Parliament. They want a strategy, they want answers, they want a free education because, fees have frozen, but they haven't necessarily fallen. So they want an answer to that. They want insourcing nationally in campuses, not just at UCT, not just at Wits, but at campuses everywhere. And so they went to Parliament to get answers, right? And they didn't really receive it. They just got a memorandum handed in to the Deputy Minister for Higher Education. The Deputy Minister sent representatives out to speak with them, but still, there was just a repetition of what they've been saying for weeks. And so now UCT students are saying that we're going to go back next week, Monday. If we don't get answers, we'll shut down UCT again. We want to mobilize the Western Cape. to partake in these protests.
Sure.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of, obviously, government involved in that process, and I think it was quite an interesting one to watch, how people were reacting to the way the police responded to the protests at Parliament, as well as how the government responded and what the students responded to that. So basically, South Africa, we went out and asked the people on the streets to find out their opinions on the Fees Must Fall protest, and here's what they had to say.
When you have to protest, you have to be kind of rough to get a message through. I think it's a good way so people can actually see the anger in the students, and how else should you make a message clear to the government? It's quite hard.
It seems like the method that was used in protesting and marching to Parliament was more effective than it would have been had we just written a letter.
Very often in this country, that's the only way you get heard, because this is an issue that has been, it's not new. It's not like we woke up today and found out fees was expensive.
I was not an active member of the protest, mainly because I didn't agree with the way they went about things.
I don't like being in the middle of chaos. So I'd rather remove myself from it and then watch it from the sidelines.
It angers me to think that, you know, we're fighting for the future generation. We're fighting for our freedom in terms of getting education, and we have a right to education. It's not a privilege.
If our people are not going to listen to us, you know, then there will be people who want to try to get that attention. And the only way in South Africa I see people getting attention is through violence. And they are complaining, but they're doing nothing about it at the same time. So far, it's the right way, and it's just the way that how it goes.
It's no use making a noise everywhere and the government is not listening to you, whereas you could have gone into a small group and gone to a specific person that works in the government that helps that people and like sort it out face to face.
I mean, it kind of worked now, but like it should have been more civilized and more like thought out and planned out.
The methods that they use, it became violent. I mean, there's no way of solving problems.
We're trying to fight for your future kids, your kids that are in primary schools and high schools, to one day be able to afford an education and not be restricted because of finances.
Some interesting points brought up there. I think quite a nice diverse bag of opinions, and I think many South Africans that are watching this now might also feel very much like, oh, how could they say that? How could they say that? Which is very clear that we are not on the same page when it comes to this discussion, I think, in many ways, because lack of information. I think people don't know the entire process of it. So we're hoping to crack this open from a purely logical point of view. What happened? What people want? So have the students received what they wanted out of this protest?
No. What the student wants was free education. A 0% increase is just for 2016. What happens in 2017? What happens in 2018, 2019? Are they going to have to shut down campuses every year?
Yeah.
You know, so they want the free education. They want 0% increase for every year. And they want insourcing to be adopted nationwide, because for many of these students, they come from a history of families that can't afford education. They know the experiences of black families who struggle and suffer to actually get their children to school. And they want their parents or, you know, relatives to earn a decent living wage, their communities, so that they can afford education.
Sure.
As one of the people said in your insert, free education, you know, there's a right to higher education. It's not a privilege. So there is a duty to provide free education.
Sure. And I think that's going to continue to happen. And whenever you mobilize a group of people, you're going to have breakaways. And recently we had, obviously, the new protests that are starting to come out. And just give us a brief insight into what's going on now, because I know we can't tackle all of this right now, but where do we stand now?
Okay, right now, you see, before the 0% increase announcement, right, there was a very unified approach to these protests. Students were working together with the SRCs. They were working together with various organizations in the campus to make it happen, right? Now, there's been some kind of disruption about whether to continue, whether to write exams, what are the kind of, you know, effects of not writing exams? Are people going to have to, like, find a way to stay on campus in residence? Are people going to be able to graduate? Are first years not going to be able to go in next year? So there's that issue. And then there's also a bit of issues within the leadership at the universities. You know, at Wits, at the University of Cape Town, at UWC, even UWC today, right now, they are booing the SRC because they feel like the SRC isn't representative of them, and the SRC has made statements distancing themselves. So what they need going forward is a unified approach to the protest, making decisions, and they need proper leadership so that they can take it forward.
Okay, that's a nice precursor. Thank you so much, Raeesa. We appreciate all your opinions on the couch. South Africa, I know you must be sitting on the edge of your seat with lots of opinions and questions and concerns. Go to the social media sites and find us, Afternoon Express, and make sure you get commenting. We do have all the other points of view coming up on the show today, so make sure you stay tuned to get the full picture. This was just a quick overview of what's happened up until now. We must take a short commercial break. Afterwards, Jeannie makes us a maple and mustard chicken wings with summer slaw, and we speak to the incoming SRC president at Wits University to chat about the past month from a student's perspective. Don't go anywhere.
Fresh Pack. Goodness comes naturally.
Welcome back to Afternoon Express. Now, I've got to give you a little teaser because, I mean, really, this is sensational. It smells good and looks like it's going to taste absolutely delicious too. So, how do we get started making these tasty maple and mustard chicken wings?
So your maple and mustard chicken wings comes like that. You'll then put it in the oven for 6 to 10 minutes on each side with the grill on.
Okay.
Easy, Bob's your uncle.
Done. Oh, this is actually just
Yes.
that.
Very
Okay.
easy.
Even I can do that.
Okay, so then for the slaw, you've got your red cabbage, your micro herbs, your sunflower seeds, your red onion and your mango. So you'll mix all of that in there and then I'll do the dressing.
Okay, great. I'm going to take everything that's here and mix it up.
So
Okay.
maybe leave this for the end so that they stay crunchy.
Perfect.
So
I
for
can
your
do the
dressing,
salad.
you'll put the spring onion and the chili in the pot. Some soya sauce for that nice umami. Squeeze of lime.
Oh, lime just goes well with everything. I
Yes.
throw lime or lemon on everything.
And then, of course, the trending flavor of the month, which is maple.
Yeah.
So you're going to heat that up.
Why is
reduce
maple
it a
the
bit.
trending flavour of the month, by the way?
So we've got 9 flavors that we're actually working on. Maple, one of them.
Okay.
So there was obviously a census did, and then we checked what's trending. Maple came up as trending. And then just people always kind of get confused of what maple actually tastes like.
Yeah.
But if you close your eyes, well, this was my memory, and I taste maple, it reminded me of the candy floss machine that used to go around. So that little burnt sugar pieces taste
lovely.
exactly like maple. Okay. So once that's reduced and all the flavors have now found each other and they're working together, you're then going to throw it in a bowl, wait for it to get a tad bit cold, add your olive oil. You're going to whisk that up.
I'm getting creative here with my salad. How's that? Is it meant to be like that?
Looks good.
Thank you.
And then you're just basically going to pour this over to dress our
This is
salad.
just so ridiculously simple and actually quite impressive. I reckon if my friends had to come over for dinner and I had to serve them this, they'd be blown away.
And that's it. Mustard maple wings and summer slaw.
That's it. Listen, darling, dinner took me all night. You better enjoy it. Remember, if you want to cook with us as well, all you need to do is visit our website, afternoonexpress.co.za, and there you'll find our shopping list and, of course, this incredibly simple recipe. Oh, I can't wait to tuck into this. Right now, though, Bonnie's on the couch with our next guest.
Nompendulo Mkhatshwa, the incoming Student Representative Council President at Wits University, was one of the women at the forefront of the first student uprising at the university. She joins us on the couch to give some better insight from a student's perspective. Welcome, Bogoto.
Thank you very much for having me, Bogoto.
Lovely to have you in the loft. Cool, so where did the journey begin? What prompted the hashtag Fees Must Fall journey?
Right, so I'm now the president officially from the 1st of November. It's a lot of pressure, I think, and I can feel it on my shoulders. What had happened was that in the shadowing period, me shadowing the outgone president, President Shira Kala, I then had the opportunity of sitting in as an observer in the council meeting that would have taken the final decision on the increment for the year 2016. And I was able to witness the manner in which the voice of students through the SRC is largely marginalized in these discussions. I've been saying that it almost felt as if we are just a mere painting in the boardroom that these discussions take place in. A conversation that would then be that would be vital or important to the student representative, which is, of course, the SRC and the Postgraduate Association. They also have a seat in council, would take about 20 minutes, whereas a conversation that was ideal to the rest of the council members would take about, like, towards an hour. And the limited information that the SRC was given on particular issues when they had requested for that information, or the answer or the response that we don't have those particular documents, was very worrisome to the SRC, because if we are requesting particular documents and we think it is important for those documents to be there to make a decision of this nature, and you're saying you don't have that document, then on what basis are you then making these figures? It's almost as if you're thumb-sucking these figures.
Right.
So, from that from the undermining of the SRC or the student voice, Comrade Shara Kala then said to me, Prez, I think we should take this to students. And I said, okay. And she lobbied her SRC, and I lobbied my SRC. We lobbied other student governance structures like the ARC, the Residence Council, and others, from school councils and so forth, and various progressives in the institution. And a protest that started with about 10 people blocking the Empire Gate and Yale Gate in the morning on the 14th of October at around 6 a.m. And of course, we caused traffic. At around 10 o'clock in the morning, there was apparently traffic leading up from Empire Gate to Melrose Arc as you're approaching Sandton. And then that's when you had the police arrive on site.
And in 9 days' time, it took over the whole country.
It was huge.
Oh my gosh. We're going to talk about the development of it and how it just erupted into this mass movement, which we're all going to look back in history books and say, wow, what a time. Okay, cool, awesome, we'll be back. Okay. We also asked people's opinions on the current costs of higher education in the country. Here's what they had to say.
My opinion of the Fees Must Fall campaign is that it's a very valid campaign in that it echoes a lot of concerns that the majority of students have.
Financial exclusion isn't fair because education should be free and it should not be a privilege in South Africa.
Like, I'm almost down to school and I would like to go to CPUT school. But then, like, they're raising the fees. I'm like...
It would be very hard for me to afford for her to go to varsity.
It's exorbitant prices, and for students with no jobs, how can we afford it?
It is becoming very expensive, and it's becoming a dream that's only attainable for those well-to-do families.
Obviously, with the media portraying certain issues like the violence and stuff that has happened, there is a negative spin on it, but there is a good intention behind this thing, and I prefer to see this as a good opportunity to allow more people to further their education.
If you're poor, you're only getting poor as you go, and if you're rich, you have the advantage, and that's just totally bad.
Wow, that was really what's at the heart of this movement. But what do you think? I mean, there's been many protests at university over the years, but what was it about this protest that just catapulted it into this nationwide movement?
So you're correct by saying, and I think that must be outlined, to say that the issue of fees falling, or the disgruntlement or the struggle towards financial access to institutions is nothing new. It hasn't started in 2015. It's a struggle that the generations that have come before us have been fighting. But I think we must analyze the nature of the country at this point in time, particularly when we're speaking about student activism. Roads must fall, the 1 million 1 month campaign, open Stellenbosch, and now you have fees must fall, and you have end outsourcing. So there's a trend within the country at this particular time to take up on
running through
issues. And I mean, maybe we're trying to prove society wrong, when we speak about this idea of a born free and how apathetic the born free is. And maybe the born free, and I say this in inverted commas because there's an issue around the terminology of born free on its own. Because what exactly are we born free to? Many born frees argue that question on its own. But the born free is taking out their inner being and their inner consciousness and saying we are here and we are aware that it's not yet Uhuru, Also, I mean, I think when people, it's like a pressure cook. You know, you get to a point where you just can no longer take the pressure anymore, the frustrations anymore. And when we speak about moving our country forward, we know that education and skill development is a large part of it. And now if we don't have access to it, how do we then, you know, play a hand in developing the economy of this country? Of course, we must look at things like the curricula that is being provided at these institutions and how we can also transform that parallel to the idea of free education in our lifetime.
Yeah, it's also incredible how social media has lended itself to the voice of protest. It's almost evolved it to a certain extent.
It's played a large role, and it's told our story. At some point, we had a hashtag when I was called a he, and President Shira was called my deputy. There was a hashtag, the real Wits story. You know, where we just felt that let's tell our own story. And you could see how then society was abreast again on the real matters, and how the media also was just a bit apologetic and, you know, tried to tell the real fees must fall story.
You're still with us in the loft. We're just going to take a break now.
Okay.
But after the break, we're on the couch with Dianne Parker from the Department of Higher Education and Training, and we make some delicious Demerara sugar meringues.
Sustainable fishing that leaves fish for the future. Are you with us?
Welcome back to Afternoon Express. Now, we're discussing everything revolving around the recent Fees Must Fall protests. Joining us on the couch now is the Deputy Director General of the Department of Higher Education and Training, Dianne Parker. Welcome to the loft.
Hello, how are you?
Very, very well, thank you. Now, President Jacob Zuma has agreed to 0% increase in fees for the following year. Where is that? What does that mean?
Basically, what we've done is we've done an exercise across the country to understand what the financial implications of that are first.
Yeah.
And so we've been able to quantify what that really means, and we've got an agreement with the universities that they will assist us, and we will find a way of managing that gap to ensure that we're able to register students next year and go forward. What it's going to mean in the long run is much more, because we're talking about a 0% for this year, but then that means there hasn't been an increase in the baseline of university funding.
Exactly.
So next year we're going to have to look at, as government, at how we can deal with the issue of the baseline funding within the system itself.
So according to Cyril Ramaphosa, there's a 15 million rand shortfall at the moment. So is government not going to be subsidising that for universities?
15 million?
Yeah, are universities going to be taking that, carrying that punch?
I'm not sure where we get that figure of 15 million from. I didn't hear that.
Yeah, there was a report done by Cyril Ramaphosa that said the shortfall was 15 million rand.
The report, the ministerial report
yeah, within
on
the universities.
No, I think that that's a bit of a misinformation.
Okay.
The report was done a couple of years back, a ministerial report on financing higher education. It wasn't 15 million rand. At that particular point, we did quite a lot of work to understand what the shortfall was in the baseline funding. And what was said then is that you might need up to 15 billion more within the system. And that was specifically, I think, in relation to a single year. But that's not the figures that we could work on now. I think that's just misinformation about the report. Perhaps people who've said that haven't read the report.
Of course.
The system itself, we know, is underfunded. Our own paper at the Higher Education Summit showed that.
Yeah.
And that's because of choices that have been made over the years. The choice in South Africa has been, and I think it was also driven by the Millennium Development Goals, that we needed to focus on basic education and pre-primary education first. And from that perspective, there's been a much greater percentage of the education funding going to develop the basic education system.
Okay, but then having a look at that, if you take first year high school, like a grade 8, for example, that could cost 45,000 rand approximately to send your child to.
It depends on what school you're in.
Okay.
Some schools are free schools. We know that.
Yeah.
And other schools you have to pay. And some schools are far more expensive than our universities.
And would you say that the quality of education in those free schools would be you know, on par with those?
I think that's something that one has to look at. There's some free schools that do have very high quality education, but there are others where there is, we know, a major problem with the quality of education, of basic education. It's one of the challenges we have in higher education as well, because we're having to fund higher education, open access to the broad range of students, and then support them into higher education.
Let's look at what the students are demanding. Is there a possibility that fees will fall? What's it going to take?
I think fees have fallen. This year, there's a 0% increase, which means that the fees generally across the system, I think the average increase across the system was around about 8-point-something%. That increase has not happened. Okay. But for fees to substantially fall at the most expensive universities, because you understand we've got different fee structures across the institutions. We've got some institutions which do have quite low fees, actually relatively low fees, and other institutions that have very high fees. And you'll see that the protests started at the institutions that have very high fees. And that's partly because of the range of programs they offer and what they are aiming for as institutions themselves. And what's happened is because the baseline funding for the subsidies has not kept up with the growth in the system. And you remember the growth in the system is about creating availability of higher education spaces. So when we double the number of higher education spaces, but the funding only goes up 30%, you can imagine that there's that gap. And that's what's happened, is that the fees have been going up at those institutions, and it's being displaced onto students. And that's where we have this problem. So we've got to the point now where our students who are not the complete poor, because those are mostly covered by the National Financial Aid Scheme, but students who are not able to access that kind of financial aid and whose families can't afford to assist them.
I actually tweeted the other day saying, if fees should fall, would you go back to study, or would a lot more people go back and study? And I was so impressed by the amount of people that would want that opportunity to study. And I think that's the most beautiful want that your country could have, is actually to be educated. Anyway, thank you so much for coming to chat to us. Right now, though, let's cross over to the kitchen with Bonnie.
Thanks, Judy. I'm always thrilled every time a chef comes on the show and makes meringues. The fact that basically 2 ingredients are used, egg whites and sugar, and they react together to make something so light, airy, and delicious is always a fantastic treat, not only to watch, but to eat too. Today, Lisa joins us to make a new variation on meringues using Salati Demerara sugar. Welcome to the loft, Lisa.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. These look absolutely gorgeous, but you always have a twist. And what's the twist?
So what you do is you mix the vinegar, the corn flour, and the vanilla together to form a paste. So if you want to do that...
I'll do that. I love helping.
And then, okay, you can go ahead.
Okay, vinegar.
And then over there in the kitchen edge, we have the egg whites.
Okay, we can swap to make it easier for you. Okay.
So the egg whites have been beaten to soft peak phase. Okay. And then what we do is we add the brown sugar, which is the salati.
Right. And this is an unrefined, sticky sugar,
might make a bit of a noise.
Why
it's an unrefined sugar that's had treacle added to it, so it gives a very brown, caramel color.
Yes. I mean, does it dissolve? Does it take longer to dissolve?
It does take longer to dissolve. The granules are slightly bigger.
Yeah.
But it does make a very delicious, sticky caramel flavored meringue.
And it's a
if
lovely
you can start
color.
adding that slowly into here.
Okay.
It will be a bit tacky.
Yeah, it is. It's a bit clayey, like.
That's fine.
Okay, all of it?
All of it can go in. And we're going to turn this up slightly.
Why do we add vinegar? What does that do?
It stabilizes the meringue, as does the corn flour.
Okay.
I'm just going to turn it up for you a bit. Sorry. There we go. Add the last bit in.
There we go. It's very clayey, very sticky, sludgy.
That's perfect.
There you go.
Absolutely perfect. And when it's formed to a soft peak,
you basically can't make this without an electric mixer, right?
You can do it by hand. It's going to take you a long time.
Oh my gosh!
But you can
before your arm
do
falls
it.
off.
Yes.
Yeah.
Much easier with an electric mixer. So as you can see, you've got soft peak meringue. And then what you simply do, can I have that spoon, please? You can either use a piping bag and pipe them onto a baking tray. I quite like loose form meringues.
So you just spoon them on and swirl. Okay.
Just spoon them on. They can be a bit rustic and loose form.
Okay.
And you can also do all different sizes. You can make big ones, you can make small ones. Also, what's lovely about these meringues is you don't have to eat them only as a meringue by themselves. You can crumble them over desserts, into ice cream,
yes, you
onto
can.
fruit salads.
Meringues are so
And
fascinating.
these simply get popped into the oven.
I just love how they melt in your mouth. And what do we have on
That's
on this
greaseproof
paper?
paper
Is this
that has
greaseproof
been
paper?
greased.
Okay. And for how long? How long do they go in the oven for?
They go in at 100 degrees for about an hour and a half to 2 hours.
Okay.
Depends on how sticky you want them. If you want them slightly dry, you can leave them in for a bit longer.
Okay.
If you want them a bit gooey inside, you leave them for slightly less.
Okay. Okay.
And
Perfect.
that's as simple as that.
Okay. Awesome.
And into the oven.
And they come out like this, guys. So if yours don't look like this, go back to our website, afternoonexpress.co.za, and just check where you went wrong. We still have to put some jam on it, right?
Yes,
Is that our
this
next
is like
step?
a strawberry.
Okay, cool.
I need another spoon. I can just pour it over, not a problem.
Okay, awesome. Oh,
And
so we're
there
just
you
spreading
have
it
it,
over
yeah.
it all.
You
Oh,
can obviously dish
yummy.
into separate bowls if you like.
And
there you have it.
That is so yummy. I can't wait to taste that. After the break, we're joined by academic economist Professor Seeraj Mohamed to take a look at the road forward for South African higher education. Don't go away.
Blended with treacle syrup, Salati Demerara makes delicious honeycomb, cookies, crumbles, brine marinades and sweet potatoes. Salati, always good, always sweet.
Welcome back to Afternoon Express. Now, I hope you've been sharing your opinions on all of our social media sites because we asked some of you your opinions on whether or not free higher education is a possibility in South Africa. And here's what you had to say.
I just don't think it's feasible or viable to have free education because then it's like becomes this whole like where's the competition for schools? Like obviously I do think that fees must fall, but I think that there should be more like action in the government in the sense of like creating scholarships or like allowing financial aid like in more banks and letting it be cheaper.
I feel that free education is possible, but at this stage, in the financial stage of our country, I don't think that it is possible right now.
Yes, on both accounts. I feel it is possible because there are many countries in the world that have a model that uses free education at university level, at high school, and all different levels. Is it necessary? Definitely, because the large majority of South Africans cannot afford to go to university. It's a fact. I come from a community that's very similar to what many students come from, and it was very hard for me to pay my way through university. A year after I graduated, I still was paying back my university debt. I didn't get my degree until after a year and a half of graduating.
And I think most of these opinions are the ones that are shared by a majority of South Africans. Now, with us to shed some light and give us a realistic view on what is and isn't possible with regards to the future of higher education is Professor Seeraj Mohamed, an academic economist and writer currently at the University of the Western Cape with more than 20 years' experience working on economic, industrial and financial development issues. He has been active in research as well as formulation of economic policies for South Africa since democracy in 1994. It's a warm welcome to you, Professor Seeraj. Good to have you with us in the loft.
Thank you for having me. I'm
So
glad to be here.
it's an exciting conversation to have. I'm glad our country's at this point where it is having this conversation as openly as we're having right here in the loft. And I think the biggest thing coming from those little voiceovers that we just heard now from people in South Africa who are sharing this opinion is that we are dealing basically with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. People are saying, I want an education. But this fits into a much broader scheme of government policy in terms of getting us out of the economic crisis that we're facing at the moment. What is that broader picture?
Well, we live in a world that's coming out of a global economic crisis that grew out of a financial crisis. And I think lots of the pressures that families and the students within families feel today is born from within the home, and the pressure. Before the crisis, people had easy access to credit. The opportunities seemed to be there, but that growth wasn't real. It was based on financial speculation, increased house prices, speculation in housing markets, debt-driven consumption. And I think now people are feeling the crunch. The world's feeling the crunch. And that's happening within our universities, it's happening within our homes. And in South Africa, we sort of rode a wave where things looked like they were getting good, with 5% growth, but that growth wasn't based, I think, on growing the economy. And education and the skills that people have And I think higher education is a huge part of that. It's about how we grow the pie.
Absolutely.
And so I think we do need policy change from a macro level through to the education system that thinks through what are fiscal policies, education, development in spending, infrastructure spending is an investment. Do we have to constrain our fiscal spending by seeing that as consumption rather than investment?
Yeah.
And then how do we think about overall fiscal policy and what is affordable in South Africa given that?
Absolutely. And I think the biggest question that a lot of South Africans have at the moment is, suddenly now, we had 16% increase that was put on the table. The president has now said that, no, that's going to be dropping to a 0% increase. Where is that money going to be coming from? Is there suddenly an extra couple of billion that's now available to spend on higher education? Or was this planned for? Where did that money come from?
Well, I think everyone's looking at the other person and saying, well, what can you put on the table? But I think ultimately government's going to have to bring a large part of that budget into the universities and to think through what that means in the future, because I think students have seen success, and I think next year they could start preparing earlier for the announcements of fee increases and fighting fee increases. And I think the overall demand is free education. And what does that mean? Is it free education for everyone, or just for the poorest South Africans and having different fee structures? So I think what we've seen is the leadership of the universities and government getting together and saying we can change things, and there is a political will to change things, and we'll find the money. We actually recognize that we can find the money. And I think when we approach the whole issue of free education and what that means, I think what we need is the political will, and then we can start the discussion, then we can do the maths.
So we really have put a plaster on a much bigger issue here. So we said, so for the next year, we'll drop that fee increase. But there is still a massive issue here, which is getting access to education to the public. And so from your understanding of what the students are asking, how feasible is free education for South Africa moving into the future, knowing our economic crisis?
Well, I think what we need to do is think about our overall development and the way we grow ourselves out of a crisis, the way we invest in the economy and its people, and then have the pie be bigger. At the moment, South Africa spends, some of the figures are about 0.6% of GDP on higher education. Countries like India spend almost 2%, Russia more, China more as well. But the thing about GDP and spending on GDP is that if GDP gets bigger and you spend slightly more, the percentage of GDP gets smaller. So we need to think about the overall pie and what development thinks. And I think educating people, especially higher education, where you can build the economy, where you can innovate, where you have people willing, who are self-starters, is going to cause the pie to get bigger.
Absolutely. And so that's my big question to you, seeing as you are the professor, you've had lots of experience in this field, you've discussed policy, you've helped formulate policy. What would you say is the best governmental policy to make sure that the outcomes that we receive from this campaign are sustainable for the future of South Africa and grow our economy at the same time? What would your suggestion be to government?
I think in the short to medium term, there should be a look at medium-term budgeting. And what we can do to increase the education budget without harming the basic education budget.
Exactly.
And looking within government spending where that can come from. Can we cut the defense budget? Can we cut certain types of budgets? And can we move money into a bigger pot for education? In the longer term, I think it's about seeing education overall, but especially higher education, as an investment in the future, an investment in the development of our country, and then taking the approach forward and integrating that with things like the National Development Plan and industrial policy action plans and national growth plans, and seeing how we can move forward from
I love that. Professor, thank you so much. I think this has spread light on the fact that it's not necessarily a discussion around this issue. We've now opened it up. The entire economy and the way that we structure our budgets has opened up to the rest of South Africa, and we can all engage in this discussion on so many different levels. And we've done that right here in the Loft, South Africa. So make sure you guys join us after the break, because the conversation is going to continue with all of our guests sitting in one place. So make sure you stay right where you are.
Sustainable fishing that leaves fish for the future. Are you with us?
Show them how much you love them with Bob Martin.
Welcome back to Afternoon Express here in the Loft on SABC3. We're still discussing the aftermath of Fees Must Fall, and our guests are still with us. And one question I wanted to ask you earlier, Nompendulo, is why is ending outsourcing and Fees Must Fall why do they go hand in hand as a discussion?
Of the one to the other?
Right, so the reality is that we're members of society before we are students, before we're leaders. And I think it wouldn't make sense for us to be in the same vicinity or in the same area when a particular component of that collective is feeling oppressed or is feeling exploited or has a particular concern to put on the table, and we as other members of the society aren't walking hand in hand with that particular component of the group. So I mean, essentially what I'm saying is that workers form part and parcel of the community at Wits, and if they are unhappy about something, it's our what should be our natural responsibility to speak up for them as well. And that's where the idea of Ubuntu comes in. You know, I am because we are. And I think also when you then take it to the socio-economic debate, if we are saying workers must earn the ridiculous amounts that they earn and must be exploited in the manner in which they are, right? Their children will not have the opportunity to come to schools or universities or have access to education like others do. Of course, you may want to bank on NSFAS, you may want to bank on bursaries, but those aren't guaranteed. So it means that because the mothers and the fathers can't afford, their children won't come into the institutions. So there's a reinvention of the same class.
It's just a recurring pattern, yes.
I think the question that came about was, couldn't insourcing also help contribute to lowering fees within universities too? Because if we're insourcing training ourselves, we're not paying that extra commission. So
that is true.
Well, I mean, it's again, we have to do the maths, but my sense is that insourcing will increase prices, but then we have to think about what that would mean, again, for the community, for the student body. And I mean, at universities, when they started to outsource, there was a huge fight, and the students and staff stood together against it. And it was a way to save money. It was a way not to take responsibility for people's medical aid, pensions, contributing to that, for not providing bursaries to their children, as was said. And so it meant that people who were working at the universities may have been working for a company that did the outsourcing of cleaning services, and came to work at the universities, but they didn't have the same benefits. Their jobs were more precarious, they didn't have the same rights. And at UCT, for instance, the university ended up actually adding to the wage that the contracting company was paying the workers, because people were upset with how low the wage was. But if we think about outsourcing as a problem globally and within South Africa, it's happening within all industries. It's happening in mining. You get whole shafts that are outsourced. It means that we're not taking a long-term perspective on building skills within our workforce. People are treated as short-term. You can replace them, you don't provide them with the benefits, and you don't see them as lifetime
the cheapest
people.
that I can.
But it also means, as was said, that their children don't have the opportunities. Their children become cleaners again. They don't have, aren't able to get education.
Cycle, really.
Yes.
And now, Nompendulo, going forward, are students settling into studying and preparing for exams? I hear there's like points of contention around this particular issue.
So we must never forget that one of our primary and most revolutionary mandates is to get and attain this education for us to be able to then play a role in the economy, right? There's arguments around what kind of graduates are we then producing? Are we producing graduates that will fall into the system, into this very same oppressive economic system, many who would like to call it a white monopoly capitalist system, right? So there's issues around that. About what kind of graduate are we producing. But we must produce the graduates.
To be done to get the
Right
education.
now, we must produce the graduates because they have families to feed. The reality is that by January, some law students will have a guaranteed job, and by the 30th of January, they must be sending some money home.
Sure.
We've only got a couple of seconds left. So in closing, what would your parting comment like to be?
Well, I mean, I think this issue of outsourcing actually is something that we have to really look at to understand what is the economic issue around there and what will that effect have on the cost of higher education generally. Students have been calling for a fall in fees. Some students have been calling for free education for all, which is not actually what is the policy position in the country generally, because the policy position is free education for the poor and those who are needy.
I'm afraid I'm going to have to stop you there because I'm afraid we've absolutely run out of time now on the show. But thank you so much for joining us. Until tomorrow, continue the conversation online. Ciao.
Coming up tomorrow on Afternoon Express, popular Afro-pop artist Zahara joins us on the couch to chat about her career and personal life, and she treats us to an exclusive live performance.
Another feel-good production.
Hi YouTubers, thank you so much for watching the show. Be sure to not miss another episode by clicking subscribe right over there. And we'll see you every day. Afternoon Express. Enjoy.